Hey, what's going on, everybody? So now we're back to part three. Wow, because of the Steve Bannon drama, right? In my series about the cronies of Trump. So we had to do two parts so far on Steve Bannon. And another thing about Steve Bannon is that he's obviously connected to the QAnon movement, right? And may have been a benefactor to QAnon, right? So let's see what's going on here. So Q accidentally outed himself, but QAnon followers don't care. So, so in a new documentary, the administrator of 8kun, or I think 8chan, all but admits to being Q, but his followers insist their leader is a government insider with ties to the Trump administration. So I know there's like a good thing about this here. Let's see what go here. So at one point in the series, Watkins attempts to throw the documentary marker off the scent by claiming former Trump advisor Steve Bannon was Q, presenting evidence from the 8kun website to suggest Q's posts were made from a location close to where Bannon lived. So Hoback's documentary ultimately proved that a lot of QAnon researchers had already concluded that Ron and Jim Watkins were the gatekeepers for Q, and without their help, at the very least, the person or persons claiming to be Q would have not been able to post their updates. So there was like this low. So like if you there's a documentary on HBO Max about the QAnon stuff, and like they supposedly tracked the source of some of the data to a place in California, I think which is close to where Steve Bannon lived at. Maybe I think it was either that or Florida. But then, but the actual servers that QAnon actually operates on are hosted by this like weird dude, these two weird guys, Ron and Jim Watkins, and like he was like some ex Air Force guy who like started like a Japanese porn website, and like his son is like this kind of like weird anime Nietzsche follower. The son reminds me of Paul Dano from Little Miss Sunshine. If you ever see that movie, like if you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Well, so Quanon stuff. I'm trying to get through this one quicker, man, because we went through some stuff, bro. Like Steve Bannon, Guo and Gui stuff was crazy. Michael Pack. Wow. So Quanon is definitely something involved with Bannon, right? But then what's crazy about another big crazy thing about Steve Bannon, right? So let's keep track, right? Steve Bannon has been involved in Cambridge Analytica scandal. He's been involved with the Build the Wall fundraising scam donation lawsuit case, right? He's also has ties to Guo Wengui, who went on trial for allegedly like almost like stealing almost like like defrauding people almost out of like $1 billion or something like that. And he's like this weird Chinese dissident guy who's kind of grifting off of that. And like if you disagree with him, he'll like sick like his like loyal rabid like fans on you type stuff. But another grift that Steve Bannon got involved with is World of Warcraft, right? So a lot of people don't realize is that Steve Bannon, right? I'll just read one of these articles because I think it'll uh, tell us something, right? So Steve Bannon got involved with like ripping off kids who were playing World of Warcraft, and he has ties to Brock Pierce, this like child Disney star, and Brock Pierce had ties to this convicted pedophile, Mark Collins Rector, who fled the country. So another weird grift. Like, why is Steve Bannon can't help himself? Like, Steve Bannon is kind of crazy. Like, this dude is crazy. Not only is he like some weird fascist dude, he's a serial grifter. So how Steve Bannon mined intense young men from World of Warcraft to the White House. Former Trump advisor used knowledge from his gaming days to help President's 2016 campaign. So years before Steve Bannon made Breitbart.com one of the preeminent names in online politics and led the final months of Donald Trump's astonishing presidential upset, he was just a guy helping dudes cheat at video games. While experiencing helping players navigate made up realities where all the news is fake and all the facts are alternative, helped him create a campaign that upended and rewrote reality. So, but Bannon's run on the White House couldn't have happened if it wasn't for the lessons he learned as vice chairman of International Gaming Entertainment. According to Joshua Green in the new book Devil's Bargain, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump, and the Storming of the Presidency. Founded by Brock Pierce, a former child star of Mighty Ducks fame, IGE was essentially a middleman for major games like World of Warcraft. As Green explained, the Hong Kong-based company, remember Hong Kong, Johnson Co, Eric Prince, we'll get more into that later. So as Green explained, the Hong Kong-based company specialized in gold farming, in which gamers would hoard digital loot like armor, gold, and weapons to sell to players of immersive games like World of Warcraft. It would then sell the imaginary loot to clients who paid real cash. So they were basically having sweatshops of Chinese people play video games all day, stack up on the little trinkets in the game, but then they would sell those trinkets for real money at insane markups to kids and pocket the difference. Like just total scumbag stuff, right? So it's almost a perfect metaphor for the way Trump's campaign exploited fiction, like the notion that President Obama wasn't born in the United States to make real material gains, like winning the presidency. So, so when Bannon joined IGE in mid 2005, he sought to take gold farming to industrial scale by building out a supply chain of low wage Chinese workers who played World of Warcraft in continuous rotating shifts, battling monsters and dragons to produce a steady stream of virtual goods, according to Green. These gamers would earn as little as 25 cents an hour in what the New York Times dubbed virtual sweatshops. IGE would then sell the WoW accessories to Western gamers at a markup, despite operating in a gray area between gaming studios and its customers. IGE's plan seemed foolproof. Bannon landed 60 million in funding for the operation, spearheaded by Goldman Sachs. However, World of Warcraft creator Blizzard Entertainment and the game's passionate army of fans quickly pushed back on IGE's business plans. Blizzard, under pressure from its customers, started shutting down the accounts of suspected gold farmers and sellers, wrote Green. In a 4-week stretch in early 2016, 800 gold farming accounts affiliated with IGE were shuttered after a livid fan from Florida filed a lawsuit against IGE for substantially impairing the collective enjoyment of the game. IGE was in crisis mode. Pierce was forced out and Bannon was named CEO under the company's new banner, Affinity Media. IGE's meltdown would prove invaluable for Bannon moving forward, though. Bannon was captivated by what he had discovered while trying to build the business, an underworld he hadn't known existed that was populated by millions of intense young men, most gamers were men, who disappeared for days or even weeks at a time in alternate realities, Green wrote. So he leveraged his knowledge as an executive chair of Breitbart News, targeting motivated gamers and message board denizens of sites littered with cries of "Make America Great Again," like 4chan and 8chan, Reddit, etc. Bannon's intimate knowledge of the gamer enthusiasm translated seamlessly into politics, where he was able to marshal the online armies of trolls and activists that overran national politics and helped give rise to Donald Trump. So he basically he basically groomed an army of online angry gamers, basically, who are anti-feminism, anti-wokeness, anti-this, anti-that, yada yada. Why is there a black person in Star Wars? Wah, mom, go get me some pizza rolls, some pizza bite bagels, types, people, and turn them into an army that helped Donald Trump. One reason why I don't really play video games, I haven't played video games in like decades. I mean, video games are cool, but I just like people who play video games. A lot of the times, they don't know what's going on in the world. Is a total distraction, but they are fun. Maybe I should get back into it. So, Breitbart's resurgence under Bannon and the site's unwavering support of the GOP nominee caught Trump's eye. Bannon was brought on a board. I'm sorry. Bannon was brought on board as chief executive of Trump's campaign last August, where he harnessed the lessons he learned at IGE and carried over to Breitbart to galvanize Trump's massive online following. So you know how the rest turned out. Just after Trump's election, the Washington Post quoted one of them: "We actually elected a meme as president." The declaration was accompanied by an image of Pepe the Frog, a symbol of racist right-wing trolling. So there's that, right? So, but Brock Pierce, right? Who is Brock Pierce? So first off, though, so one thing though is that um, this is where Milo Yiannopoulos got involved, right? Because Milo Yiannopoulos was like one of these kind of vocal voices of the Gamergate controversy. So you have a lot of like angry gamers attacking feminists and stuff for calling out like gaming culture. And Milo Yiannopoulos got famous for like being an advocate for like many of these like angry video game kids. And that's how Milo kind of got involved. And Milo is like a friend of like Sebastian Gorka, and like Sebastian Gorka and Lauren Southern and all these weird alt-right people spend a lot of time in Hungary, and we know that Hungary is home to Viktor Orban, and Viktor Orban is arguably, some people speculate, a middleman between Vladimir Putin himself and Donald Trump, while Donald Trump is like secretly planning his own like illegal foreign policy outside of like the government's purview. The same thing that he was trying to do in 2016 with Michael Flynn in Russia, etc. Like, it's just more of the same stuff. These guys just never quit. And like our government and the media, how much they talk about Donald Trump, they just let these people go. Like, it's like, why are y'all wasting my time? Like, I'll do the research myself if you can't put it all together and make a case and like take these people down. But so here we go here. So Brock Pierce, right? I'm just gonna close this one. So this is Brock Pierce, right? So Brock Pierce, yada yada. And let's go down to what he did here. Personal life. So he married, so Brock Pierce of the IGE with the World of Warcraft So Brock Pierce, he is married to Crystal Rose, CEO of Sensei and co-chairman of the United Council of Rising Nations. In 2000, three former DEN employees filed a lawsuit against Michael Collins Rector and Pierce, alleging that they provided the plaintiffs with drugs and pressured them for sex when Pierce and one of the plaintiffs were still teenagers. Jeez. So Pierce, along with the other two Den employees, fled the United States. They were arrested by Interpol in Marbella, Spain. Pierce was released without charge. Rector eventually pleaded guilty and left the United States. So the three plaintiffs voluntarily dismissed all charges against Pierce without receiving any compensation. The court records show that Pierce paid $21,600 to one plaintiff's attorneys because said attorney refused to file the order of dismissal requested by his client until the attorney's expenses were reimbursed. In 2017, he relocated to Puerto Rico along with other traders, becoming the leader of a group focused on creating a cryptocurrency-based local economy on the island, capitalizing on the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. So we got Mike Collins Rector. Look at this dude, bro. Like, jeez. Whoa. Don't leave him around anybody. So, is an American-born businessman who founded Digital Entertainment Network, an online streaming video broadcaster and dot-com failure. In 2004, he was convicted of child S abuse, which was highlighted in the 2014 documentary An Open Secret. So he was born in 1959. Jeez. He looks like one of those dudes who's like trying to constantly stay young, but is just working horribly. So in the 1980s, Rector founded TeleQuest, a Florida-based telecommunications company. In 1984, he founded World Travel Net, a company which electronically coordinated cruises and tours. Its affiliate, WorldComNet, was floated on the Vancouver Stock Exchange in 1987. Its valuation briefly peaked at $100 million before increasing competition led to bankruptcy. Rector and business partner Chad Shackley founded Concentric Network, an early internet service provider, in 1991. So Rector and Shackley both sold Concentric in 1995, and using money raised from the sale, as well as close to $100 million of investor and venture capital, formed an early internet video media content delivery company, Digital Entertainment Network. Collins Rector was the co-founder and chairman of DEN and exhausted its funds following a failed IPO bid and collapsed amid allegations of Collins Rector having sexually abused boys, coercing them with drugs and guns. Jeez. So this is another one. So child enticement. Collins Rector and his business partner Chad Shackley and Brock Pierce operated DEN out of a Los Angeles mansion. There, they held parties attended by Hollywood's gay A-list. All those parties, Collins Rector and others were alleged to have engaged in sexual assaults against teenage boys. So in August 2000, a New Jersey federal grand jury indicted Collins on criminal charges that he had transported minors across state lines for the purpose of having sex with them. After his indictment, Collins Rector fled to Spain together with Shackley and Pierce. Interpol arrested all three of the men in May 17, 2022, or sorry, on May 17, 2002. Geez, we're already in 2020, so I get tongue twisted. In a house in the Spanish city of Marbella. Shackley and Pierce were released without being criminally charged. Guns, machetes, and child sexual exploitative content were found in the house. Rector Collins fought extradition proceedings for 2 years before returning to the United States, where he pleaded guilty on 8 charges of child enticement and registered as a sex offender. He admitted luring 5 minors across state lines for sexual purposes. He received credit for time served in a Spanish jail and was registered as a sex offender under weekly supervision. In 2006, a U.S. District Court granted Rector Collins permission to go to the United Kingdom to receive treatment for a brain tumor. He subsequently renounced his U.S. citizenship and never returned to the United States. In 2007, he was photographed in London. In 2008, living in the Dominican Republic. So that's kind of weird. Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, not that far away from each other. I wonder are they still in contact with each other. As of 2014, he lives in Antwerp and uses the name Mark Collins or Morgan von Phoenix. So goofy. So see, so Collins was a silent partner in the MMORPG service company IGE, which touches back to Steve Bannon, which was founded by ex-Den VP Pierce, who was chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation. IG, which is another thing too. A lot of this Bitcoin stuff, like I know a lot of people are hopeful about it, but because it is unregulated, and it is anonymous, we all know that Bitcoin, Silk Road, a lot of that type of stuff. I would not be surprised if there's some child exploitative stuff also involved, unfortunately, in Bitcoin. So IGE used an address in the city of Marbella, Spain, where Collins, Rector, Shackley, and Pierce shared a villa until it was raided by Interpol in 2002. Jeez. An open secret, man. Because they even talk about like Bryan Singer, who like directed X-Men in it too. Bryan Singer supposedly will like kind of coerce people and like intimidate them into like doing like sexual favors and all this type of stuff. And he was also at these like allegedly underage sex parties with Mike Collins Rector and Brock Pierce. So a lot of crazy stuff, man. And this documentary came out in um, 2014. Wow. They even talked about Brian Peck, right? So Brian Peck, I think was all he. I think his name got brought up a lot more. Got brought up more recently in all the Nickelodeon exposés and like the I want to say too. Yeah. So the Drake Bell stuff. So isn't that wild? The same documentary that calls out Brock Pierce and Mark Collins Rector, both of those guys involved in that IGE company with Steve Bannon. That same documentary that they're both talked about in also features the same guy who's involved in the whatchamacallit, all the Nickelodeon exposés with like Drake Bell and his unfortunate abuse that he received. And it seems like he's become like unfortunately like a type of weird like a predator in his own right or his own way too or something. Jeez, he spent 16 months in prison. Jeez. Okay, so and I want to say that this guy here, Brian, check this out. The pedophile who assaulted Drake Bell was pen pals with um, John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer. So the acting coach who sexually abused Drake Bell was also pen pals with serial killer John Wayne Gacy. Think about that, right? Wow, wow. We went from Steve Bannon through a couple degrees of separation to John Wayne Gacy, one of America's most prolific serial killers. And but make America great again, people. Don't look deep into anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, sorry, I'm not falling for it. And you know what? I'm kind of getting tired, so I'm just gonna roll through some of this stuff. But get out of here, get out of here. So yeah, this is Mark Collins Rector. This is Brock Pierce, who looks very strange there, and that's Brian Singer and everything. So all the people caught up in the Open Secrets documentary. These two guys right here were involved with IGE and DEN with Steve Bannon. It's crazy. So close out of there, and this is just some of the stuff that Mark Collins directed. Man, so found the elusive man at the heart of the Hollywood sex abuse scandal. Digital pioneer Mark Collins Rector lost millions before he vanished, believing that the movie mogul David Geffen wanted to destroy him. Now he's broke and alone, but the sex scandal he left behind continues to consume Hollywood. You got to remember, Steve Bannon was a part of Hollywood. He was a part of the Hollywood kind of community. Wow. So before it all came crashing down, Mark Collins Rector had convinced almost everyone that he was a visionary. By 2000, he had raised millions for a precursor to YouTube called Digital Entertainment Network, with a pioneering idea to distribute video entertainment not through theaters and television, but through the internet. The company produced its own content as Netflix does now, and Collins Rector even patented a video advertising method that Google has used for its own advertising efforts. With corn silk hair and a wide smile, Collins Rector was charismatic. People who knew him said some called him a genius. Indeed, Collins Rector might today be a Silicon Valley titan if not for one thing: his fascination with young and often underage men. Boys, I mean. So running his business out of a Los Angeles mansion, he and his two business partners. We already kind of went over this stuff too, but this is wild, man. Man, you can probably just read this article. Actually, you can probably just find it and read it yourself. But that is not a pleasant looking person right there. The elusive men at the heart of the Hollywood sex abuse scandal by BuzzFeed News. Wow. But I feel like I'm talking too much about this, so we're gonna keep going through, right? And the weird thing is that Steve Bannon, Brock Pierce. Let's go back here. So here we go, right? So even after knowing all of the drama and abuse involving Mark Collins Rector and potentially Brock Pierce. Brock Pierce, for whatever reason, is still out and about. It doesn't seem like he's been found guilty of anything. Um, he was in hot water though, it seemed, during these allegation stuff though. But he paid some people off, right? Think about this. This article by Politico is April 22nd, 2022. Bannon is helping a Vermont crypto bro get elected to Congress. So Steve Bannon is still in contact with Brock Pierce. Brock Pierce, I guarantee you, through some method, was probably still talking to Mark Collins Rector, right? And both of these men were in the Open Secrets documentary that talks about uh, Brian Peck, who is a convicted pedophile who was pen pals with John Wayne Gacy, who is one of the people who assaulted Drake Bell in all of these kind of new Nickelodeon, was it All Quiet on Set documentary stuff going on, right? So that's what I'm saying. You got to think too. There's been a lot of pedophiles in the Trump administration who've been busted. A lot of or people like kind of in his kind of like street team kind of advocacy groups who've been busted. I would probably say at least two or three. So don't get it twisted that these conservatives, just because a person says they're Republican or conservative, doesn't mean they're not a degenerate. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of these MAGA people just put the blinders on and they're blaming like out of the closet, like like harmless like gay people or something. People like just because you're gay doesn't mean you're a predator. And I feel like a lot of the predators, ironically, are the ones like hiding behind not being gay. And that's always kind of not always, but doesn't that seem to be the case in like true crime? Like a lot of those, serial killer people, like they weren't out, they weren't flamboyantly gay. A lot of them, you know what I'm saying? They pretended to be regular people, or not. I hate to say that. They pretended to be straight people. I did not mean that in like an offensive way or anything. But you know what I'm saying? Like I fear more of the conservative guy who doesn't seem out of the closet, who probably is, more than like just a regular like gay person who's just out of the closet and is like I'm gay. You know? So wow. And then Brian Peck also knew Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen had his own allegations, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, a lot of that's we're kind of getting into internet gossip culture type stuff, But but it's just a weird couple degrees of separation. But it's just weird how Steve Bannon likes to talk about how he wants to drain the swamp and he's not establishment, but in the videos I've been making, he worked for Goldman Sachs. He was a Hollywood movie producer. He's been involved in multiple scams. He's been doing business with people he knows are crooks. He's been doing business with people who are tied to pedophiles. And like it makes you think like what is Steve Bannon hiding? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trying to stereotype the dude or anything, but I don't know. But let's keep going, right? Oh, here's another thing too, right? We also know that what you call it, Steve Bannon has ties to Jeffrey Epstein, because Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel or whatever, wanted to help Jeffrey Epstein clear up his image, and Steve Bannon was the person helping them do the interview, even though the interview got called off. So Steve Bannon has ties to Epstein too. So Epstein connections, Hollywood connections, Goldman Sachs connections, ripping off kids, ripping off people who wanted to build the wall in their fundraisers. He has connections to Guo Wengui, who was investigated by the feds for like potentially ripping people out of hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion. And he has ties to through the grapevine to Mark Collins Rector, a convicted pedophile who fled the United States, who was featured in a documentary that includes Brian Peck, and Brian Peck is a convicted pedophile who was pen pals with John Wayne Gacy, and this Brian Peck guy assaulted Drake Bell, which was talked about in the Nickelodeon All Quiet on Set expose. And this is MAGA. I'm not talking. This is MAGA stuff. It's like a lot of the times, you know how like conservatives like to always point, oh, they're all pedophiles or whatever. The people who cast the first stone type thing, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times, the people who are out here alleging a lot of this stuff or whatever, that's why it gets frustrating. It's like we can't even have a regular political conversation with like MAGA people because they're just unhinged and they throw out all accusations against people and everything. Like when you start calling people as pedophiles that aren't, you almost start letting pedophiles who are off the hook because they're just out and about pretending to be red hat wearing people, but they're over here just chameleons, shape shifting into whatever. That's what they do. They're people with a sickness who just are like chameleons who have like no control over themselves. And there is no curing it, unfortunately, it seems. So, the strange saga of Jeffrey Epstein's link to a child star turned cryptocurrency mogul. So, Brock Pierce ended up as a Jeffrey Epstein guest along with a NASA computer engineer, an MIT professor of electrical engineering, and a Nobel laureate in theoretical physics is a bizarre tale involving Steve Bannon and the international man of mystery who may or may not be dead. This is from 2019. So even before Jeffrey Epstein's mysterious death, August 10th, many people who knew him were hoping the world would forget, or better yet, never learn that they had any association at all with the notorious predator. One such person may be serially self-reinventing entrepreneurial Brock Pierce, who as a teenager co-founded the eventually infamous digital entertainment network and who, in the mid to late 90s, was associated with an alleged sex abuse ring, this one involving young men. Several later contended in court filings that Pierce and two associates had drugged and assaulted them at parties in their Encino mansion. Pierce was never charged with any crime and has repeatedly denied wrongdoing. He settled with one plaintiff and two others dismissed their cases against him. So in 2011, about a decade after the digital entertainment network imploded, Pierce visited the Virgin Islands to attend quote unquote Mindshift, a conference of top scientists hosted by Epstein. A representative for Pierce says he didn't know who Epstein was when he flew commercial to the event, which the financier had arranged as part of his elaborate effort to launder his lurid reputation. It was not even 18 months after Epstein had completed his slap on the wrist solicitation sentence in Florida as registered as a sex offender. The rep for Pierce says he saw Epstein after the meeting a few times over the intervening years at industry events. Where many other prominent people were present. He adds that the few communications that Pierce had with Epstein related to cryptocurrency, an area in which Pierce established himself as a crypto centimillionaire or maybe a billionaire in the following years of the conference, right? So nothing suggests that anything of a sexual nature or anything untoward at all occurred at Mindshift. Pierce is the only one of dozens of figures in Epstein's dizzying vast network, and the link between the two may be nothing but a curiosity. But in a strange tale, how a former child actor who never went to college ended up at an Epstein guest, a seemingly unlikely addition to a group that included NASA computer engineer, an MIT professor of electrical engineering, and a Nobel laureate in theoretical physics. I do not know what he had to do with science or why he was there, says one person who attended. Cryptocurrency was very much in its nascent stages when Epstein invited Pierce to Mindshift. His bio on a list of attendees reads entrepreneurs, uh, creator of virtual currencies and goods. His rep says he attended the invitation for the opportunity to interact with major scientific thinkers and participated in a panel discussion on cryptocurrency with prominent scientists. It is unclear if anything Epstein expected to get from Pierce, who was likely to add to the prestige of the conference. Epstein's activities in the area of cryptocurrency remain mysterious. In 2017, he gave an interview to the website The Next Web in which he expressed a vague interest in the area, and the Wall Street Journal has reported that Epstein claimed that he worked for the U.S. Treasury Department on cryptocurrency. So another strand may connect Epstein to cryptocurrency and indirectly to Pierce. In 2015, Joy Ito, then director of the MIT Media Lab, announced a digital currency initiative. This came during a financially challenging time for the Bitcoin Foundation, the industry's first trade group founded in 2020, and Ito hired cryptocurrency developers previously supported by the foundation. Just days after Ito's announcement, Pierce was named the foundation's chairman. Ito recently resigned from MIT Media Lab following reports that he had accepted donations from Epstein and attempted to conceal the relationship. So another strand may connect Epstein to cryptocurrency and indirectly to Pierce. So now it's just though this came during the financial challenge time for the Bitcoin Foundation. Huh. Okay. So interesting. Wow. Jeez. We're looking at 42 minutes on that one, right? So let me just pop through the rest of this, right? So this is the rest of other Steve Bannon's crazy stuff, right? So Steve Bannon, well, another crazy stuff he was doing was it's weird. It's like right wing guy, like these right wingers and libertarians and all these type of people with like seem to kind of always be around like sexual predators or something. Like it's like all this traditionalism and conservatism. They just want to go back to the days where like people just couldn't like say anything. That's what they want to go back to. Like when there was just like no like oversight at all for like their crimes and abuse. So Steve Bannon met with Nazi-friendly AfD party in Germany. Wow, Steve Bannon says Jewish leaders support nationalism, praises Nazi-friendly AfD. So the German AfD is like this kind of far right party in Germany, and they have a person named Victor Medvedchuk, right? And he has direct ties to Putin. So another connection between the Trump administration and Russia. Yeah, the far right's ties to Russia so alarming. The far right ties to Russia so rising alarm in Germany, and that's published this year. German far right politician denies taking Russian money, and because there's a thing in like neo-Nazi far right circles about the Red Brown Alliance, and I think there was like a prominent Nazi, I think Ernst Remmer, and he advocated that he actually thought the Nazis should have joined the Russians to destroy the West. So there's still that seedling of a thought in kind of far right circles. And it's very interesting to think that the AfD in Germany, I believe, is more popular in the eastern part of Germany. In other words, the ex-Soviet part. And it's not because people of East Germany are bigots or anything like that, but you got to realize that West Germany was a lot more economically successful than East. So there was a lot more disparity in Eastern Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? So when you introduce United Germany into the land of globalism, where you have immigrants competing for jobs and wages, you have diversity, you have people who've been basically cut off from the world under communism, now thrust into hyper competitive global capitalism, who kind of yearn for the past, who look more east. Therefore, they look more towards, Putin. And Putin was actually a KGB station chief in East Germany, who kind of led, I believe, who was like the handler of like the East German Stasi, the secret police, and I believe even had connections to like certain like left wing terrorist groups or something like that, or whatnot. So that's the thing about Putin is that Putin after the fall of the Berlin Wall, he it doesn't matter, like even though he grew up a communist, he's kind of shifted the whole communist herd mentality into a right wing fascist monarchist orthodox mentality. So you have the same control apparatus of like a centralized government, but instead of like dialectical materialism and the proletariat and the revolution and the hammer and sickle, you instead have statues of Tsar Nicholas and the Orthodox Church, and you have Orthodox priests blessing nuclear weapons, and stuff like that. So the AFD is kind of like the MAGA movement of Germany, but they're far right, over there too, with a lot of Nazi sympathizers and outright Nazis in them. And they're Eurosceptics, so they want to break away from the European Union, which benefits Russia, and get closer to the Kremlin. So just more stuff over here, right? So this is Steve Bannon with Giorgia Meloni. Giorgia Meloni, far right, Mussolini, fan in Italy. She's the prime minister over there. So Steve Bannon not only met with the AFD, he's also met with Meloni. So because he's on this quest, right, to just unravel the order. He wants to go to this world of strongman dictators living in this sort of fantasy land of fascism. He's a fascist. The MAGA movement is dangerously a fascist. It's threatening with fascism. And to put it this way, if you're a Republican, fine. But at the same time, MAGA, they took over the Republican Party. And any voice who tried to kick them out were kind of just thrown out of the party. And that in and of itself should be a warning, right? That's like some like Nazi party stuff. Like it started off and like there are all these different mindsets and they're all kind of working for the same thing. But then Hitler kind of purged, the different, competing forces of Nazism and consolidated power. So this is Bannon with Maloney, which I kind of think too is that a lot of these fascist leaders, right? I wouldn't be surprised if they're working at the behest of the international banks like Goldman Sachs. Like Steve Bannon's pretending to be a populist, but he's not really a populist because he is establishment. He is a Hollywood producer. He is an alumni of Goldman Sachs. He is an alumni of the military complex. He is a connected insider with Washington and everything like that. But by pretending to be populist, he can get the masses to fall for fascism because fascists do what? They hand over the economy to corporations, just like Nazis did with Bayern and Krupp and Daimler and all those companies, right? Heckel, all those companies, or Hinkle or whatever. The fascists use populism to take over a country, and because they don't believe in the proletariat, they believe in a weaponized bourgeoisie. They believe in hierarchy, top down mentality, right? As a result, they hand over the economy to the commissars, who are basically the CEOs of corporations who rule over their societies with an armed fist through a police state. And this is what they're trying to do here in America under MAGA. It's what they're trying to do in Germany with the AFD. It's what they're trying to do in Germany. I'm sorry, Italy with Maloney. What they're trying to do in France with Marie Le Pen, who luckily lost her election, but only by the God grace of a coalition, not because Macron beat her outright. A coalition had to beat her. You got Viktor Orban in Hungary. You got Geert, whatever his name is, in the Netherlands. You got Nigel Farage and the Brexit people in UK. The world is primed for 1920s, 1930s nationalist strongmen, despots, and they've convinced and tricked the American people through the anti-woke campaigns, through the influencers on social media to basically hate the left so they can put these far right people into power so they can institute fascism. Global fascism is what they're looking for the benefits of the 1% and the rich on a planet of depleting resources, rising climate, rapid wealth inequality, lack of faith in institutions, the dilution of fiat paper currency, the monopolization of precious metals like gold and silver, which are deflationary which are deflationary assets actually, but fiat currency, which is inflationary, in gold and silver, which are deflationary, are both controlled by the same people, by the same 1%. So it's Maloney. So then we got Le Pen, Marine Le Pen with Bannon and everything too on his Euro fascist tour. American Lampoon's Euro fascist tour. Nigel Farage. Steve Bannon actually tried to create a monastery, or he actually did. He bought a monastery and has turned it into a far right training center in Italy. Right, in Italy, it goes back to my first video, has always had a problem with fascism. For whatever reason, it's like fashion in fascism, in pasta, or what they just produce over there. In porn. It's like porn, pasta, fascism, and in fashion. In like a Euro Cup, or like a Euro Cup every like 12 years, and a World Cup every 20 years. So yeah, Steve Bannon bought a monastery, and that's just that right there. Look at that goofy face. Yes, yes, yes. My name is Nigel Frog. That's the most. I'm sorry. That is one of the most British looking faces I've ever seen. That is some wall. That's like a Wallace and Gromit face. But love the British people though. So I'm just gonna end it right there, man. Like, Steve Bannon is exhausting, and I needed to do that because he kind of just fills out just a piece of all of this, man. Like the MAGA movement, I'm trying to do an analysis on. My next video is actually going to be about Eric Prince and all of his craziness and all of his stuff coming up here soon. So more to come on it. So thank you, and I'm gonna wrap this up. All right, bye.